Hi, welcome to the Right Academy. I'm Matthew R. Miller. You know, every writer has weaknesses and strengths. Every human, right? Every artist, every human. We all have things we're good at and things we're not so good at. One of my great weaknesses as a writer is that my characters get along too well. I don't know, I have trouble putting interpersonal conflict into my characters. I have no problem having the characters have conflict with the world or with the enemy, but many times I'll read my work and I'll say, man, these people just get along too well. They need some interpersonal conflict between them among themselves. I think it probably comes from my own life, my own childhood, kind of like me against the world, me and my couple of friends who understood me against the world instead of against one another. And I've never really liked interpersonal drama and all that stuff. I'd rather just get along. But we need to, in our writing, create interpersonal or inter-character conflict. In other words, the main character and their friends, their allies, need to have problems among their own group. Why? Well, first of all, it's realistic. In real life, not everyone gets along. In real life, a group of friends will have drama. Why do you think there's so many, dramas and series on Netflix and on movies and stuff about this kind of thing, especially the teen dramas, right? Because it's engaging. People love it. It's realistic. Some people like drama. Second, because it is immersive. Okay, it creates a depth to your characters, and it's immersive. And I hope you can see the theme when I talk in these videos, in all the videos, is that you want to immerse the reader into your world, into your story. That is what will make people love your books. If your goal is to have people read them and enjoy them, that's the way to do it. Immerse them in it. Don't snap them out of that immersion. And when the characters all get along too well, it's not realistic. And so that is one of my greatest weaknesses as a writer. I often have to go back after I finish a book and write in scenes of conflict and change things just to make it, better, to make it more realistic. So how do we do this? How do you build conflict among the main characters, the friends, in other words? Okay. There's a few ways you can do this. First thing you want to do is build tension throughout their interactions from the beginning. And even if they're best of friends, even if they get along great, you need to put little spots here and there of tension. Maybe one has a crush on the other that's not requited, not returned. Maybe one has an annoying habit. Maybe one isn't as trustworthy as they thought. Put little bits of tension throughout the story and then build up to something. Now, second, throw a wrench into their lives. Here's what I mean by that. Have something happen to create problems for your characters. That's just good advice anyway. Characters need conflict, transformation, resolution. But have something happen to test them, to test their friendships. If you ever traveled with someone who is a friend, and after a couple of weeks traveling, you're thinking, man, this person is awful, and you kind of wish you hadn't traveled with them because they're annoying as a traveler, and then you get back home and maybe it goes back to the way it was and you just don't want to travel with them again. Maybe it changes your relationship. Kind of like that. Have something happen in the characters' lives that will mess them up, that will give them problems, so that they have to deal with it as a group. And, well, depending on how many main characters you have, so that they'll have to deal with it together. And that's going to cause problems because everyone's different. It's going to create conflict. 3, make sure that conflict is related to the plot. Don't just randomly have two people get in an argument for no reason, no apparent reason, just to say you did it, okay? Everything you write in a story needs to somehow be related to the plot. Every place the characters go, everything they do, every conversation they have needs to somehow relate to the plot. So make sure this tension, this inter-character conflict, is a part of the plot. Next, make it serious. Make it a big deal. Don't just have them one likes pepperoni on pizza and one doesn't, and that's their conflict. Have it be a big deal, right? Make it something big. Make them get in a big yelling match, or make one of them do something awful. Next, have them become enemies for a while. Have a break, even if they're the best of friends. Have maybe one shuns the other, or ignores the other, or moves away, or something like that. Have them become enemies. Have that go on for a while. This is going to engage the reader because the reader's going to feel like, oh no, everything's messed up now. I wish it could return to the way it was. Then they're hoping it will return to the way it was at the end of the book. Another thing to keep in mind, Each or all of the characters involved in this inter-character conflict should have, at least in their mind, a valid reason. They should think they're in the right, and the reader should be able to see that. Remember, no one is 100% good or 100% evil, 100% right, 100% wrong. I think, at least, in all of us, there's good and bad, dark and light, wrong and, error and truth, the duality of people. So they all should have a valid reason. In their own mind, they should think they're in the right and the others are in the wrong. And you should communicate that to the reader. Next, you should have them miss one another. Okay, have them miss one another. No matter the source of the conflict, if they were friends before, they need to kind of miss that relationship. Either they miss the person or they miss the way things used to be. Then they need to have some kind of a reconciliation. It needs to come to a head. They need to have this split, this big tension. Then somehow they need to come back together and reconcile. Now, I suppose you could, if you wanted to, have them never reconcile as one goes off and you never hear from them again. That's possible, I suppose, in a story, but much better is to have them reconcile. But it doesn't mean it has to be a happy ending. When they reconcile, you have some choices. You could have, first, everything going back to normal, the way it used to be, and now everyone's happy, sure. You can make things better. Because of this conflict, they've looked at themselves, they've transformed, they've become better people. Now the relationship is better than it ever was. Or you could have everything changed, worse. They'll never quite be the same again, even though they've reconciled. It's your choice as to how to resolve this. Keep in mind that it depends on the genre of your book too. It depends on whether you want to write a happy ending or a tragic ending. It depends on your readers. It depends on many things. And then finally, you want to have in a story, let's say a book. I'm assuming you're writing a book. One major conflict and split among the main characters, and then a couple of other spats, okay? So you do want to have them get into some tension, but you don't want to have them constantly just be, horrible enemies the whole time. Otherwise, they're no longer the protagonist. They now become the antagonist. So in a book, you should have one major issue, one major huge conflict. They split, they reconcile. And then if you want to throw in some other things, along the way, make them small, okay? So build tension, throw a wrench into their lives, make the conflict related to the plot, make it serious, have them become enemies for a while, have them both have valid reasons, have them miss one another, have a reconciliation, and have just one big split in a book. Now, examples of this in books you may be familiar with, or stories you may be familiar with. The Harry Potter series. Remember when the Yule Ball, the Christmas ball there, when they were trying to get dates, Ron didn't want to go to the ball, but he felt obligated. Hermione wanted Ron to ask her, but he didn't until the last minute. So she went with Victor Krull, whatever, the guy from another country. Ron got jealous. He got angry. Hermione was angry that he hadn't asked her until and she felt like his last choice. And so they both had this falling out. What happens then? They later reconcile, and of course, at the end of the series, they end up getting married. Another example on the darker side, my kind of thing, horror. You remember the TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer? I'm unashamed to say I think it's the greatest TV show ever made and ever will be. I love Buffy. It came out when? Was that, I guess, the 90s, right? So if you remember, I think it was the very first episode, Xander had a big crush on Buffy. They go to the Bronze. They're dancing, but Buffy is just teasing Xander. She's just teasing and dancing with him, making him think she likes him, but she doesn't. And it really hurts him. So in the very first episode, you have tension. Later in the series, when Buffy kind of loses it and leaves town for a while and it kind of abandons her friends, when she comes back, Xander's really angry and they have a big falling out. So that's another example. And then once you get to the end of the series, they're friends again. Their friendship hasn't changed. Yes, it's transformed, but at least they're still they're on the same side again, okay? So those are two examples from stories that you may be familiar with. It is very important to have this interpersonal conflict. The reason I thought to do this video today is because the book I'm currently working on, it's a young adult book, the first young adult book I've written, in fact. So I'm not, I'm still learning. I realize all these characters get along too well. They're all friends. And I was like, my goodness, this is kind of unrealistic. And my editor also pointed this out. my characters need to have more conflict. So what I'm going to have to do is to go back in the manuscript for the 1000th time, write in some new conflict, even write a new chapter here or there, take some things out. That's just part of the writing process, revision. It's the hardest part, in my opinion. But make sure your characters have conflict. It's one of many ways to draw the reader into your world, to make sure that the reader loves this world, doesn't want to leave the world, and when they finish the book, they think, oh man, I wish I could go back. Then if you write a sequel, they're going to buy it. I hope that helps. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. It's free, no obligation if you subscribe. It helps a lot. I'm Matthew R. Miller, and you're watching the Write Right Academy.